products and services of microfinance. Now, microfinance is the offer of financial and non-financial services to people excluded from the traditional banking system. Now, banking consists of the rural banking, urban banking, now banking which is also there in metro cities, but most of the villages they are away from the formal banking system in India. To meet the objective of financial inclusion, now in India the government of India also promoted the microfinance and different self-help groups which are there in India, and these are working for the betterment of the lives of the poor people in India. Now, microfinance is very simple. It is the amount of money which is sanctioned to the micro entrepreneurs, self-employed, low income population, now excluded population. Now, these are the main activities which comes under microfinance. The small amount of money which is very much required to the villages for the purpose of small businesses. Now, for example, vegetable vendors are there, now kirana shop owners are there, but they are not in a position to mobilize the amount of capital in a larger scale. Now, for that they are logging the funds to start the business. Now, for that a particular formal system which is required, but previously formal system which is not there, they depend on only on the informal way of borrowing the amount of funds from the money lenders. So, money lenders charge higher the rate of interest. Now, because of that whatever the amount of profit they will get in their business, so this total amount of profit may be repaid in the form of interest, because the rate of interest is very high. You know very well 30%, 40% or 26% like that, the interest rates which may be charged by the money lenders. Now, for the purpose of that, if the formal institutions may come forward to grant the amount of loans to the micro entrepreneurs with the lower rate of interest, now they are in a position to do their business now according to the cheaper the rate of interest, and whatever the small amount of profit they can mobilize, now that profit may be used for the purpose of their family. So, after the payment of the interest. Now, self-employed, so some of the individuals they want to work on their own and they want to stand on their feet. Now, for that the self-employment opportunities which is also created under this. Now, for that they also require the amount of money for the purpose of starting their own small activities. Now, low income population or the public or the population which they have very less amount of income. Now, for that they are not in a position to do any activity. Now, for these activities they require the amount of money. For that the amount of small money which is required, and somebody must come forward and grant the amount of this money in the form of a loan. Now, they can get the benefit out of it. Now, population which is very much excluded from the formal financial system. Now, we will call it as excluded and included population which comes under the banking. Now, the population which is very much excluded, now they are living in the rural villages. Now, because of that how we have to include them into the banking. Now, because of that the central government which is initiated a scheme that is called Jan Dhan. Now, the most of the accounts which are permitted to open the villages are the excluded people, now without depositing any amount of money. Now, for that this is one important initiation which is initiated by the government for the purpose of inclusion, and they are not having any idea about the formal banking and all. So, because of that now they are in a position to know how to deposit, how to withdraw the money, now what type of loans which are available to them, like that. Now, the excluded people must be included. Now, for that the microfinance is playing an important role in India. Not only that, the other foreign countries which are also experienced, so many success stories are there. Because of those success stories in India, this system is also implemented and most of the people benefited at present. Now, we have to concentrate on the finance. So, finance is the amount of money which is required to start the business, or it may be the money which is required for the education of the children. Now, for that the educational loans they require, now the loans which are also provided by these institutions, and they can also save smaller the amount of money which may be deposited with these non-banking or banking companies. Now, micro insurance is also playing an important role. So, insurance which is very much required today, it may be in the form of a health insurance, or maybe the term policy insurance, or for the purpose of retirement. Now, different insurance policies which are very much required. Now, in India the coverage of health insurance is very poor. Now, for that which we have to improve, and for this we require the various products and in the form of insurance and target the rural people. Now, according to that they will get the benefit out of it. Now, not only that the amount of money which is also remitted from one place to the another place. Now, with the permission of the banking companies or the non-banking companies, which the smaller the money which will be transferred from one city or maybe the place to another place within the country. Now, these are the two important terms which comes under micro and finance, microfinance. So, the important products which we have to discuss here: micro credit, micro savings, micro insurance, remittances. Now, income generation loans, mid-term loans, long-term loans, emergency loans, individual loans, micro leasing like. So, these are the certain important products and services which are identified. Now, these are the products we must try to know. Now, the students must also have the knowledge about what are the products and services which are offered in the microfinance industry by the various institutions. Now, one is a micro credit. This is the very small amount of money, for example, less than 1 lakh, the amount of money which is granted as a credit or as a loan to the villagers or maybe the economically backward people. Now, they can avail this particular product and they can also make use of this money for various activities. Now, not only that, the small amount of money which they earn every day, it may be a vegetable vendor, fruit vendor like that. Now, they will save the amount of money every day out of their earnings, and the smaller the amount of money which will be now deposited with the various institutions. So, that this is the another product which is offered by the financial institutions to the backward villages or maybe the even rural people. Now, another is micro insurance, which we have already discussed, the various insurance policies which must be required to mitigate the risk which they will face. So, for the purpose of risk mitigation, different insurance policies which must be required, and these are the policies which must target the people those who are excluded, and these policies are going to help the policy holders now in the form of different insurance policies. Now, it may be related to a crop insurance, it may be a vehicle insurance or a tractor insurance, or maybe the insurance of the individuals or maybe the family, it may be health insurance like that. The smaller the products which they must consider here, and the insurance, the different agencies which they are offering various insurance products to them. And the remittances which we also consider here is the amount of money which will be transferred from one place to the another place, or one account to the another individual account. Now, not only that, the income generation loans are also there. Now, for the purpose of generation of the amount of income, now the people they require this smaller the amount of loans, and they can also do their economic activities every day. Now, for that the amount of money which is required. Not only that, the loans which may be in the form of a medium term or maybe in the form of a long term. So, it may be less than 1 year or maybe more than 1 year like that. The loans which may be granted for a particular period of time, it may be less than 1 year, which we call it as a very small period which they can consider, and the short term requirement they can meet with these loans. Now, long term requirements also they can meet with the help of the long term loans which are granted by the various financial institutions. Now, not only that, emergency loans also which may be very much required. Now, a member may be in a family may be sick, or a family members which they require the amount of money for the purpose of education of their children or higher studies of their children. Now, for that the loans which are very much required. Now, for that they can also approach the different financial institutions like. So, we will discuss later what type of financial institutions which are lending in the market to the this type of category of people in India. So, individual loans are the personal loans which are also required to these underdeveloped or the less developed people in the country. Now, the leasing facilities which are also there. Now, based on that, so what are the types of products and purpose? The purpose we must try to discuss. So, micro enterprises are the small business loans which are there. These are the loans which will be used for the purpose of business startups or working capital requirements. Working capital is the amount of money which will be very much required to meet the day to day requirements of their small business activity. Now, for that the amount of funds which are required, and based on that the micro enterprises also requires the money, or small business forms also which may be required. Now, agriculture loans, now we have already discussed that the amount of money which is very much required for the purpose of purchase of the farm related equipment, or for the purchase of seeds or cultivation, like that the crop or the farm related activities, they require the amount of money. For that the institutions which will lend in the form of agricultural loans. So, for example, it may be a cooperative society, or maybe a non banking finance company, banking company, like that they can also into this, and they are also granting the amount of loans to them. Now, not only that, for the purpose of general consumption also, now they require the smaller the amount of funds. Now, educational loans, it may be in the form of academic or the vocational education which is required to their children, and housing loans also for the purpose of construction of a new house, or maybe improvement of the existing house. For that also they require the amount of funds. Now, these are the products which will comes under the microfinance products and services. Now, not only that, here we have to concentrate on the microfinance services provided to the self help groups. So, which you know very well about the self help groups which are included in the unit number 192. Now, according to that you may be having the knowledge about the self help groups. Here I am not going to discuss about what do you mean by a self help group. Now, anyhow, self help group is a small group which is working for the betterment of their lives, and they can borrow the money from the different institutions. So, now they can use these funds to their requirements, and they can also repay, but the amount the interest amount charged by the institutions are very less. So, for example, we can call it as Pavala or DIN. Now, for that we have to consider what are the microfinance services that are provided to the self help groups. Now, one important point which we have to consider here, basic needs, they can also require to meet their basic means day to day requirements of the people for the purpose of consumption. Now, they can also require the amount of funds for that. Now, these are the products which may be offered by the institutions to them, and self employment, now which we have already discussed in a broader way. Now, for the purpose of self employment, a person which they want to start their own activity. Now, for that also they require the amount of money. So, it may be insurance, it may be any economic welfare of the family. For the purpose of economic welfare of the family, they require the amount of funds. Right now, it is the savings also, the habits, savings habits which will be increased because of these institutions which may be working for the these poor people. So, whatever the small amount of funds which they may be saved every day. Now, if the a formal system may be there, they can save their amount of money whenever they require the funds, and they can withdraw from these institutions, and they can make use of these funds for their better for their working of the life. So, money transfers, individual loans, group loans also plays an important role here. Now, my self-help group is nothing but a group which is consisting of some 10 members or the 8 members. It depends on the type of the group which they are working, and according to that the whole group requirements, for that the institution will lend to the group, and whatever the money they can receive, that money will be distributed among the group, and these funds they will utilize in their daily requirements or their maybe business activities like, and according to the periodical intervals they will repay the amount of loan which is taken from the institutions. Now, it may be in the form of interest as well as the principal amount which is paid. So, anyhow the loans which are granted to the various people which may be below poverty line or may be having the lesser the income groups, and not only that the self-help groups which are identified, and this concept is very much popular in India. Self-help groups are working very effectively and efficiently. There are so many number of studies which are there, and the studies which concluded that these are the self-help groups which are working, and not only that the lives of the women which is very much enhanced because of these groups and the amount of funds which they receive, and they are using for the economic activity, and they can also generating the amount of funds in the future. Now, come to the microfinance and poverty alleviation. So, poverty we know, and most of the people they are not in a position to get these basic requirements or the basic benefits, they are away from this. For example, we will call it as what do you mean by a poverty, what are the activities which will be comes under poverty. So, poverty is nothing but hunger. So, they need the food. Now, the poverty is lack of shelter, they are not having the formal shelters. Now, that is why they are very poor or very far away to the basic needs. Now, poverty is being sick and not being able to see a doctor. So, the people may be sick, but they are not able to see the doctor, means they are not in a position to take the help of the doctor, or they are not in a position to pay the fee to the doctor, or they are not in a position to buy the drugs which they may be required. It may be a tablet, it may be a syrup, or may be test, whatever the doctors which they may be suggesting. Now, we even today also here we are experiencing with the television channels or maybe the newspapers. Now, they are very much away to the cities or maybe the mandals or the villages like. For example, the people those who are living in forest, they are very much away to the hospital facilities. Now, because of that, now the amount of money which is required for this particular basic need also. So, poverty is not having access to school and not knowing how to read. So, this is the another problem which we have to identify. So, if the population or the public which they are not in a position to read, or their children which is not access to the schools. So, formal education is not there, or they are away from the formal education, which is also comes under a poverty. So, poverty is not having a job. So, he is fear for the future. So, living one day at a time. So, they are not having any formal job, and they are also very much fear about the future, how they lead their life like. Now, poverty is losing a child to illness brought about by unclean water. So, unclean water is also important now. Now, for the purpose of eradicate this, now the state government which is also initiated an activity. Now, for every village the state government which they plan to pump the clean water. So, that is why the governments also expending huge amount of money in the form of various number of schemes to eradicate the poverty in different states as well as in the country. So, poverty is powerlessness, lack of representation and freedom. So, powerlessness means they are not having any formal power to do their activities or to get the things which done, or they are not in a position to participate in the political system. Now, from this group they are not into any formal political power. For example, it may be a sarpanch or maybe an MLA or maybe MP like that, they are away from this. So, whenever the elections are there, the people make use of their votes, and later they are not going to do anything to them, and because of that even today they are very much away from this formal system, and these are the benefits which they are not getting. So, because of that, those who are having these things, or those who are facing these problems, now they are comes under the poverty. So, a family or maybe a person may be into the formal poverty or not. So, for that there are different checks and balances which are there, and there are so many committees which are constituted by the Indian government as well as the the central level as well as at the state levels. Even international levels also there are various committees, and they define what do you mean by a poverty, right. So, that we will discuss later. Now, come to important person which we have to remember in the case of the microfinance. So, Mohammad Yunus. So, Professor Mohammad Yunus talks about the poverty is that poverty is not created by poor people. So, it is created by the system we have built and the institutions we have designed, the policies and the laws we created. So, the poverty is only because of failure of the system. So, the system which is created, the system is not working properly, the system which is not built properly, the institutions which are not designed properly, the policies which are formulated by the respective governments which are not properly. Because of that, some of the people they are into poverty. So, that is why, so in the words of Mohammad Yunus, so governments must play an important role in the case of the elevation of the poverty of the poor people. So, in the United States, now the poverty refers to daily income of less than $16 per day for each household member. Now, if somebody is not having less than $16, they are not earning $16 a day. Now, that member which we call it as they are into poverty. Now, the same thing which we will also consider here in the case of developing nations, it is anybody earning less than $1.25 per day. So, $1.25 per day, those who are earning now in other than US, now they are also into poverty. So, 1.25 multiplied with some 73 rupees. So, dollar exchange rate today is 73. So, 73 multiplied with 1.25, this is the amount of money which is not earned by one individual in a day. Now, they are into poverty. So, anyhow these are the definitions which are given who are into poverty like. So, now we have to try to identify the people those who are away from all these facilities. Now, we will try to recognize it, and another important point is how to eliminate. So, how to eradicate the poverty even in India. So, the microfinance institutions are the self-help groups which are formed in India for the purpose of poverty alleviation. So, how microfinance helps in poverty reduction? So, poverty will be reduced with the help of the access to the microfinance. If people are access to the microfinance or the formal finance, now their poverty will be come down. So, even if you observe in villages also, the families which are developing because of they are getting the benefit out of these the formal borrowing from the financial institutions with the very much lesser the rate of interest. So, how which must be reduced? So, access to the resources. So, people must be access to the resources. So, what type of resources you can also provide the credit, you can also provide the loans. Now, we can also provide the training facilities and supply the capital which is required to them to start a particular activity. Now, not only that the people must be exposed to the group support, the support which is lent by the group of people in the society. It may be NGOs, it may be a non-banking financial companies or maybe a banking company. So, like that they must be exposed to these activities, and these people will get benefit out of it. Now, accumulation of social capital, now reduction in vulnerability to private borrowing. So, private borrowing forcing the poor people into poor, Now, because of that the interest which they are charging very high. Now, whatever the amount of profit which they are earning a day or today, now that profit is not sufficient to repay the amount of interest. That is why they are into the same economic status. So, whatever the activity they will do from the morning to evening, so whatever they are earning, this is not sufficient to repay the amount of loan. So, that is why they are forced into poverty. Now, in this case, now we require a formal system. Now, the system which is created in India, now it may be any institution which they are targeting to eliminate the poverty. Now, for that this is very much useful to them. Now, increased income and savings, the loan repayment which is also enhances because of the access may be improved and loans which are given with lesser the rate of interest. Now, when they are exposed to the group support, the autonomy will be increased and their decision making also increases. Now, better decisions they will take and there may be a reduction in the wasteful expenditure. Now, they are in a position to know which is a wasteful expenditure, which is a necessity, like that. Now, this leads to finally providing a better education for children. Now, asset acquisition is also possible when this formal lending is there. Now, meaningful and the choices and the collective decisions which will be initiated by the family members. Now, another important point which we have to consider here, woman empowerment is important. So, if woman may be empowered, so when woman may be empowered, that family may also empowered. Now, that is why the self-help groups which are very much targeting the woman population in the rural India or maybe the woman population which they may be having the lower the income levels. Now, if the economic activity may be there in the hands of the woman, now they can work properly and they can take the decisions properly, and for that they can earn and they can save the amount of money for the future requirements of them. Now, the government of India is also initiated various steps. Now, another important point is poverty reduction tools. There are so many tools which are there for the purpose of reduction of the poverty. The first thing is governments are trying to provide the initially education facility. That is why right to education is playing an important role. Every child must be in the school. Now, when every child may be in the school, now they are in a position to know. So, what is good, what is bad, and how to earn the amount of money, what type of activities which are there, and what type of activities they must initiate or take up, like that. So, finally, I want to conclude this particular unit or the topic which is called poverty at individual and national levels cannot be eradicated like polio or the smallpox. So, because it is implicated by our mental, physical, emotional, religious and cultural states of being. So, it is not that much easy to eradicate within one day or within 1 year or within 10 years. So, governments are struggling from the last 70 years also, even though now the 30 to 40% of people they are very much not aware of these banking activities or they are not into the formal system. Now, the very much aim of the government or the as an individual also, we must try to provide inclusive growth. That inclusive growth is very much required. If the everybody is contributing into the GDP of the economy, when the economy will grow like anything, otherwise India is still developing country even after 20 years also.